Great. Glad to be here. Glad to talk about the legal cannabis industry
Yes.
and some insurance and risk management programs and practices that we engage with our clients.
And that's a very good point because obviously, as you know, Mark, we practice white collar criminal defense, but there's times in which we deal with the cannabis industry in an illegal way. But since many states have essentially legalized it, there are a lot of rules in place in terms of regulations, and there's a lot of difficulty in terms of putting you in a situation where you have to make sure you're in compliance with the different state laws and also kind of make sure they get the insurance they need to get covered. So, what are some of the challenges that you have to deal with when getting people insurance in this area?
So, Jason, we started our cannabis practice in Massachusetts in 2012 for the medical side when it first became legal. And we started to develop our insurance programs back then, and there wasn't a lot available. Lloyd's of London pulled out of the marketplace, left a big void. All of these states were starting to take a look at the medical use side of cannabis. Currently, the big talk is recreational, but 8-9 years ago, it was all medical use. So what we did is we put together a program, and we pieced it together what was available at the time. And it's a hard balance between the dichotomy of a state legal industry and a federally illegal substance.
Right.
So it's very, very difficult to get insurance carriers, or basically financial institutions, to back an illegally targeted drug, a class 1 drug, and provide insurance coverage for it. So there were a few programs out there that did a great job initially. CanAssure was a big program provider out of Cleveland. Their program fits a lot of operations that we work with. And then through the years, it's just expanded. So with a very limited scope of carriers to work with or programs to work with, we talk to licensees, and we have a very strong relationship with banking, with legal, with real estate, with consultants in the space, and they refer us to their clients all the time. So when we start talking to a new licensee here in Massachusetts, we talk about how to approach their risk management and their insurance placement on a phase basis as they ramp up. So usually it's a ground up construction or a retrofit of an existing building.
Okay.
And when we're talking about these type of licenses, we're talking about what's called vertically integrated operations, which means everything happens at the same location. They grow it, they harvest it, they process it, they package it, and then they release it for distribution out of the same location.
Well, Mark, you have so much great information, and I know this is this in the back of your hand. I just want to break down these things kind of like one step at a time, so that we can all kind of get educated on it. So, as you started to talk about, you're right that I think part of the trickiness of this area is that federally is not legal. It seemed like the last U.S. attorney that we had in Massachusetts, Lelling, who has since stepped down, pretty much came out to say he's not going to make it a priority. If it's just cannabis, I'm not going to target it. And it seems like he was pretty true to his word in terms of that, especially the legal places where the state certified those individual locations. So you were saying that, just for me, being an insurance newbie, what are the things, just talk about phase 1, right? So you have a person coming in, they're looking at a building. What are the things that cross insurance provides in terms of insurance in like phase 1? Do you insure the building? Are you insuring the project? But what are the insurance products that you provide to insure the phase 1 of the project?
Sure. So phase 1 I call the pre-cannabis or the pre-seed drop phase, where we can incorporate traditional insurance products to cover premise liability, to meet the compliance requirement of a lease agreement or a land ownership situation.
Okay.
We provide a builder's risk policy to cover a building during the course of construction. And we provide workers' compensation coverage to cover employees of that organization. So really, that's all you need initially, unless it's a heavily invested multi-investor operation, and then we may talk about directors and officers insurance. So normally those
Right.
phase one coverages take us all the way through the Cannabis Control Commission's inspections phases until we get to the final approvals.
Right.
Once a licensee gets very close to or a little bit before a licensing approval, we start to implement cannabis-specific coverages.
Okay.
So those traditional insurance companies don't want anything to do with anything relative to a cannabis exposure.
Right.
And that's fine because there's no cannabis exposure on a pre-cannabis phase.
I
But
see. I see.
when it's pending, it has to go to specialty coverage, and that's when we start to really get involved in a more comprehensive cannabis program.
And then, so are there separate insurance companies then you engage in phase two to specifically provide coverage for the cannabis phase?
Absolutely. They are the companies that they're the only companies that provide any type of cannabis coverage for property, living crop coverage, for finished stock in inventory. And these are all cannabis products. So it has to be a specific company that will address those needs. General liability, product liability,
Right.
directors and officers liability, workers' compensation I mentioned, and cargo coverage for shipments.
So really no difference in idea between like whatever crops you're really growing, but this is cannabis specific in terms of the actual product. How many companies out there right now are providing that type of coverage?
So as of today, there are about 30 companies that are involved in either all aspects of insurance coverage for cannabis or certain specific coverages for cannabis. We can go back 3 years ago and there was half that number. You go back another 3 years and we cut it in half again. So there's been a very good progression of options to the insurance buyer and for us, basically the insurance consultants, to go out and find the best coverage form, the best cost benefit for the client, and put together a nice program that's more in line today with traditional insurances that we're used to, as opposed to, piecing it together with, whatever was available 5-6 years ago.
Right. So definitely a big topic, and we'll definitely want to break it down more the next time you come on. I know cannabis isn't the only industry that you insure. What are the other products that you provide, and also what are the other situations where people should call you, Mark, and say, hey, I need some insurance. Can you help me out with this particular issue?
Right. So Cross Insurance is the second largest privately owned insurance brokerage in the Northeast, behind a company called Risk Strategies. And Risk Strategies happens to be owned by an investment group. We're still a family-owned business, so I guess we're the largest family-owned company. We provide all phases of insurance coverages, and those are for, say, personal lines for you and I, home, auto, motorcycle, boat, personal umbrella coverage. We provide those services for not only average exposure, but also high net worth individuals, where we have an aviation division that can insure their plane or their helicopter or their other means of difficult transportation. But for commercial business, where I really specialize and focus on, we work with all industry types. At some point, we might be called a generalist, but we work with construction, manufacturing, technology, pharmaceutical, and Main Street business.
So it comes to our hardest topic of all. I know you're a huge hockey fan. and I also know you're a huge Bruins fan. So I got two questions for you. One, who's your favorite Bruin of all time, and who is your favorite hockey player of all time who's not a Bruin?
Oh, okay. Um, all right. So this is dating myself back to the Bobby Orr era when I was a kid. I was a kid. So my favorite player at that time was a guy named Johnny Pie McKenzie,
Wow.
who was
Okay.
this scrappy Bruin. And to this day, I just, have such fond memories of him. And, my favorite hockey guy, actually, here's a good one. The most famous hockey player that I ever played with was my goalie in youth hockey when I was a kid, Steve Carell from The Office. He was my
Oh,
hockey goalie.
really? No, because he's obviously from Massachusetts, and his family he actually still owns like a general store
Yeah,
in the
so
state. So,
he grew up in Acton, Massachusetts, where I grew up.
oh
So we
wow.
played youth hockey, and then he went to private school at around eighth grade. So he fell off the hockey planet that I was aware of. But we played for a couple of years together. He was a great little goalie, and he's done a pretty good job for himself.
No, he's done well. So I hope you can come back next time and tell us a story about that. Thanks for coming on today, Mark.
All right, thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.